Okay. Can you hear me? Does it work? Yeah? Okay. Babak Sadighi, I came back to SIG's Rise for more than 1 year ago to start up the initiative around blockchain and applications of blockchain. So that's what I'm going to tell you a little bit about. I'm going to keep it very high level and really talk about what it is and when can we use it, and leave the more technical stuff to my colleague Leila, who comes later. This is a perfect one-sentence definition of blockchain. I think this covers all the aspects of blockchain in one sentence, which is very impressive. It's not by me, though. So blockchain is a single version of truth, made possible by an immutable and secure timestamp ledger or registry, copies of which are distributed among many parties. So there are several things here that are extremely important. The first one is that it's a single version of truth. It's not the case that we all have our versions or our ideas of what is true and what is not true, and we have to synchronize those. We all agree on one book, one register. Although we have the copies, but we have already agreed what is true and what is not true. And it's secured and timestamped, so we all know the order of what has happened. And it cannot be modified by anyone, or anyone who wants to attempt to modify the information. All the others will detect that. Okay? Technical characteristics of creating a blockchain solution are, there are these four main characteristics. Data can only be added, not deleted or modified. So it's like a bookkeeping procedure. So if you want to say that something is not true, you have to first say that the previous statement is not true, and then. So nothing has been modified or changed. So if you want to falsify something, you have to first say that, and then you say what is true next. Okay? Those entities that are part of this game or part of the network all can have, don't need to have, but all can have a copy of the latest version of this book, this registry. Okay? There is no single authority who can fully control what can be added into this. So it's a joint venture, it's a joint collaboration to put what is true and not true. This is a very important characteristic of blockchain. And finally, in order to be able to add something into the book, we agree on a consensus mechanism. We agree on a mechanism beforehand. We say that, okay, if that mechanism, we go through this, then we can add something. Now, the important thing here is that any subset of these four, would actually, we could actually achieve that with much cheaper, easier, and better solutions. It's when all these four are together as a characteristic, then we need blockchain. So many of the cases that comes to us, I mean, people who want to talk about blockchain and use of blockchain, we end up saying that, okay, why don't you use a database? Mainly because it's not the case that all those four are satisfied in their use case. Okay, now the question. We have this very interesting technical solution. What is it good for? How can we use it? When do we need it? The main reason for having blockchain is to reduce the cost of trust. Trust between people, trust with to an institution, whatever it's that is, we need to have a trust to play the game. I get back to that. And that is interesting when we are dealing with valuable assets. Assets where There is a value in the physical world, and we are representing those in the digital world, and we want to make sure that it's protected, and we cannot double spend those values. Do you follow me? Okay, let us just give an analogy to better understand. Assume that we all in this room, we are playing a game. And it's very important that we all know who has made what move, in what order. And there is a value here, so most likely some of us has interest to cheat, to misrepresent what they have done, or tell they have done something that they never did. So we need a bookkeeping. We need to have a way that we agree, okay, Babak did that, Saif did that after him, and so on. So this, it's very important to have the record at the end so we know who is the winner. Now, if there is no one in this room that we all can trust, then we have a problem. The problem is that who's going to keep that record? Who's going to make this information? What happens is that we usually go out to a trusted third party, bring the trusted third party who is not part of the game to do this work for us. So what we have done is we add some cost to this process. We have to pay for that, and most likely we have to trust that this third party is doing a good job and is not bribed. That's an important part. So it's not the case that some of us can pay him to misrepresent our moves. Blockchain is the solution where we have a system that cannot be bribed, and we all agree how it works, which replaces that trust, which we don't have to each other in the game. So we don't need a trusted third party from outside. We agree on a process, and we run this game, and we agree that as long as we follow the process, we all trust the information that is in the game, in the process, in the record. Now, to say, okay, when do we use it? I divide the world in different scenarios. So one is the regulated and trusted world. Regulated in the sense that there is a regulation, there are regulatory institutions, and we trust them. We actually believe that they do their work. Okay, in those cases, what we have seen is that having a single version of truth that we can agree on, and peers can actually exchange, transfer rights from one to the other without having a third party's approvals, that's going to simplify the whole process. That's going to reduce the cost and create the whole efficiency process. One good example is the land registry project here in Sweden, where when they are using a blockchain solution to tell who owns what, and when there is a transformation of ownership from one person to another, can be directly registered in the blockchain. So the whole process around it can be much more simpler and less costly, and also time aspect. So to some extent, we are reducing the need for trusted third parties here. And as a side effect, we're going to get much more transparency into the process. We will see, everybody can see what has happened. Everybody at any state, at any time point, can look into the blockchain and actually find out this has happened, this has not happened. Which is very important in business processes such as in supply chain and other cases, administrative processes. We all can verify the information. There are a lot of projects and ideas of using blockchain for protecting data, patient data, for example, and giving the power to the patient, giving the power to the citizen who can decide, this is my data, I put the data there, and I can decide I'm the owner of the data, I can decide who can access this data and for what purpose. That would, if you think about it, would create a lot of interesting business models in the future, where I am actually the owner of the data, not my doctor or anyone else. I can decide how my data can be used for research or for other purposes. Now, if we have a regulated world, but we don't trust the regulators or trust the institutions who are supposed to create the trust in the system, which is actually usually the source of corruption in most of countries. Institutions who are supposed to do their job, and their job is to tell that, okay, you own this land, and now you can change the ownership, we can approve that, and that is and everybody should trust that. Okay, what happens? Many times these institutions do not do their job. Or they do their job when you pay them. A good example, if we take the land registry that we are talking about in Sweden, in India, there are about $700 million annually in bribes. It's not the case that they falsify the information, it's just that they don't do their job until you pay them. So they sit with a stamp, and they say, okay, if you pay me more, I do your job first, you come tomorrow. Now, if we could do this directly, without having their approval, if I'm going to sell something to SAFE, I could do that directly without them. SAFE can verify that I actually own this land, and when we transfer, everybody else can see that this transfer has happened. Now, SAFE owns it. And it all happens on a blockchain that we all can verify and we all can see the single version of truth. So, if you ask me, I believe that this is where we're going to see the most impact of blockchain. In the third world, when there are a lot of corruptions, that's where we're going to see a lot of savings. Okay, and if we have an unregulated world, we are doing business around the world, and there is no institution who is regulating. Like case of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin. That's a completely different scenario. We are exchanging values between each other, and we all agree that this has happened without having to trust a third party or regulation who can verify that or we can guarantee that. That brings a completely new type of business models, which, okay, we have seen with Bitcoin, but I believe that we're going to see much more interesting applications in the future. Okay, now, there are different types of blockchains. Usually we divide them in two categories. The public blockchain, where it's useful in the unregulated world, like Bitcoin. Obviously, it's anybody can join and participate in the transactions. Technically complex because of the openness, because everybody can join, which actually has a side effect of the complexity brings the fact that it consumes a lot of energy, transaction times get very high, and things like that. That's because of the complexity of the whole openness of the network. Somebody asked me why is the energy consumption so high. I gave it as an analogy. It was a research fellow. I said it's like when we are applying for research funding. So it's a funding there are 2 of us going to get, but there are 100 people sitting and apply. There's a lot of energy and time that goes for that application, but at the end it's 1 or 2 who's going to get it. So if you look at it, this is a very similar situation. A lot of people try to solve that puzzle, but at the end is 1 who's going to get it. So all the other work, all the other time and energy that was spent to solve the puzzle for Bitcoin is lost. And there are also commissioned ledgers, private blockchains, where it's a known group of people. It's not the case that anybody can join or leave. We all know each other, we can verify each other, and we can bring a lot of security on top of that. Okay. Obviously, that's a lower complexity and low energy consumption and faster transactions. Just a quick, the application areas we see now is mainly into regulatory compliances, banking, trade, international trade. We see a lot of interest in sustainability and traceability of goods and material. And also, hopefully soon, in the government administration. One example was the land registry. That's it.